Do you know where you're going? Are you very, very clear on what you want in terms of being a Chief Information Security Officer? Now, once again, this is focused on cybersecurity, CISO, all that great stuff. But everything I'm asking, you can apply to other areas of your life. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. We got to get that faded music going there. Boom, 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 boom. You know what time it is. It's time. It's time. It's time. You're ready. I'm ready. We're all ready for Life of a CISO with yours truly. The E-Dog is in the house. Now, the plan, and you guys can all share in the fun and the humor with me if you've been listening to every episode. The plan is that we finish up cyber trends for CISOs today. But guess what? That was the plan 2 weeks ago and 1 week ago. So let's see if we can get this thing knocked out. So I very often, I think I told you this, but I pick a topic that I try to want to cover in 30 minutes. And sometimes I just get into it and I start covering more depth and I don't finish the topic. So then we're like, okay, we're going to do a part 2. And I have all intentions of finishing it in part 2. And then there's a part 3. So my intent last week was to finish up, and we didn't, because hopefully you got some great information and data out of that episode. But the intent is to try to finish up today, but we'll see where it goes, right? I plan out the episodes. I have bullet points. I know what I'm going to say, but real, raw, and the truth with Dr. E, I don't have a script. So I'm just speaking from the heart, my friends, and we'll see what comes out. And I hope what I say is what you need and what you're looking for. So before we get in to the cyber trends and finish our topic and discussion, or at least make more progress on it, hopefully we'll get finished. The big thing I want to bring up is, do you know where you're going? Are you very, very clear on what you want in terms of being a Chief Information Security Officer? Now, once again, this is focused on cybersecurity, CISO, all that great stuff. But everything I'm asking, you can apply to other areas of your life. So you can apply that to relationships, you can apply that to mindset, you can apply that to other businesses, you can apply that to health. So I just want you to know that these tools that I'm giving you, these questions, these methodologies, can really be reused and applied in any area of your life. But do you know where you're going in terms of your career? And I'm going to date myself, and some of you might be able to relate, and others of you might roll your eyes going, really? He's truly an OG, right? The dude's older than I thought, right? But when I first started driving, there were no cell phones. So you basically had a map, and you typically would write out directions. And I was Long Island Expressway, so you get on the Long Island Expressway. I was at exit 61, so get off at 33, and then at exit 33, you'd go on this road to that road, and you sort of have the plan. But sometimes on long trips, you'd wonder, am I going in the right direction? And there was no Siri to be like, turn around, make a U-turn, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. So one of the things you had in cars were a compass. Right? And it would tell you what direction you're going. So if I am in New York and I want to go to Washington, D.C., I know that's south. Little southwest, but basically south. So if I'm on a road and I don't want to pull over to look at the map, because when you're driving, you really can't look at maps and stuff like that. It's super hard. I would just sort of say, okay, let me look at the compass and see, am I going south? Because if I'm going south, I know I'm generally going in the right direction. I might be on the wrong road, but I'm generally going in the right direction. So you know where you're going, and then you'd have a spot check to be able to say, okay, am I heading in the right direction? But I remember one time I was going to a friend's house and just did the directions, the map, but I never really looked at where it was, whether it was north, south, east, or west. So I'm driving, it's at night, I thought I might have missed an exit, and I'm like, am I going in the right direction? And as I look down at my compass, I realize I don't know where I'm going. I don't know if I'm supposed to be going north, south, east, or west. And that's a problem. And I find that, and this has come up in the last few weeks with a lot of my newer coaching clients that I'm working with, is we're getting into it and we're working, and like it's just not sort of going as smooth as I normally like it to. And I'm sort of wondering what went wrong. And I'm checking the compass, I'm doing all those things we should. And what I realized is I made a false assumption. And that's one of the beautiful things of being a coach, is you're always learning. You're always growing, right? You're always modifying your methods. And what I realized is I assumed that getting on the call with these folks, that they all wanted to be a CISO. And they all want to be a Fortune 50 CISO with a certain salary, a certain range. But I never verified or validated it. And the reality is, where I was taking them was not where they wanted to go. One of them actually didn't want to be a CISO. He was coaching with me because he wanted to build a vCISO business. Very cool. Another one wanted to be a CISO at a small university up north because his family and friends are all from New Hampshire, and he wants to move back to New Hampshire. He still wants to work, but he doesn't want like super high pressure job, and he wants it in an area that he likes. So he was very specifically focused on being a CISO at a small community college, not only small community college, but one of 3 community colleges in New Hampshire. Now that's, in terms of specificity, my hat goes off to him, because that's the level you want. I mean, when you're at that level where you're like, I want to be a CISO, great. At a community college, great. We're sort of honing in, we're getting more focused. In New Hampshire, awesome. In a specific area of New Hampshire, awesome. One of these 3, awesome, right? That's dialing it in. But the issue is, I didn't know where they were going. So imagine you get in the car with somebody and you think they're going to Florida. You never said anything, but you just assumed, oh, we must be going to Florida. And they think, oh, we're going upstate New York. I'm in Washington, D.C. So we're in the car, and as we're going, I'm trying to give you directions, and you're getting very uncomfortable. And I'm looking at my compass, and I'm getting very uncomfortable. It's because we had 2 different destinations. So what I did with all my clients is I asked that question, okay, where are we going? Where do you want to go? What do you, and I'm like, oh, right? And then you meshed, and once we knew where we were going, then it was very easy for me to keep you on track. So the question I asked, some of you smiling because you do, some of you are smiling because you probably don't. But my question to you is, do you really know where you're going? You need to get crystal clear, because if you don't know where you're going, then driving anywhere will be acceptable at some level because you don't know where you're going, but it will be completely unacceptable and will create conflict within you, which creates frustration and stress. The only reason why we have stress about our lives or about our career is because there's inner conflict. But if you are crystal clear on what you want and you're going in the right direction, you'll notice very little conflict. Easy to get in a rhythm, easy to do what you want to do, easy to get in flow state because you're fully aligned. So just do that little exercise. Are you clear on where you're going with your career? And are you confirmed that you're heading in the right direction? And the best bet is, how do you feel? If you feel relaxed and focused and on fire, that's probably true. If you're stressed, you're like, Eric, I know where I'm going and I think I'm heading in the right. Whenever you say, I think, that should be like, whoop, 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 warning signs, right? Probably not, right? Either you know or you don't know. Don't go maybe or I think or potentially. No. If it's not affirmative, it's a warning sign. But the ultimate warning sign is how you feel. If you are not aligned, if you are not feeling like you're on fire, there's a problem. If you're feeling stressed or disconnect or frustration, there's a problem with either clarity on where you're going, disagreement on where you're going, or you're not 100% sure you're heading in the right direction. So those are just little warning signs to look at. But now, because I am determined to try to get through cyber trends for a CISO, let's jump to our topic. So we talked about on previous episodes, if you didn't listen to the last two, once again, each episode can stand by itself. You get value. You don't have to stop this. But if you want to hear about AI and regulation and standards and zero trust and leadership, then listen to the two previous part 1 and part 2. But what I want to talk about here is a few other cyber trends. One of the biggest cyber trends is you can't manage what you can't measure. You must have security metrics. The difference between a mature industry and an immature industry has nothing to do with years. It has to do with metrics. If an industry has clear metrics and alignment, it matures very quickly. If it doesn't have clear metrics and alignment, it doesn't mature quickly. And to me, my friends, that's why cybersecurity has, to me, still very immature. Yes, cybersecurity, 15, 20, 25 years, depending on how you really count it from when it really became mainstream. So people like Eric, stop saying cybersecurity is immature. It's been around forever. Just because you've been around forever doesn't mean you've grown up. Doesn't mean you're mature, right? And our problem is we've always treated cyber as sort of this mushy thing of, yeah, we're secure, we're not secure, maybe, but there's no metrics around it. There's no way to measure it. And that has to change. The way you get respect from other executives is data with metrics. Executives, chief officers. And if you're a CISO or want to be a CISO, guess what? You're a chief officer. The middle letters don't matter. If you, my friend, are a chief officer, you have to be obsessed with metrics and charts. That's how you run businesses. That's how you run life. That's how you run everything. You basically go in and you track the metrics. If the metrics are moving in a positive direction, that's great. If they're flat, that means you're heading into a problem. And if they're declining, you're in a problem. So ideally, the way you manage business is they're constantly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, they're looking at their revenue, they're looking at their profit. If it's increasing, great. If it's increasing, but less than it was previously, that's an early warning. If it starts to get flat, that's an issue. The goal of top-notch chief officers is that when something starts declining, you catch it and fix it before it ever gets flat. And then you make sure it never starts declining. If you're in a role where your metrics are not only flat but declining and multiple metrics are declining, that's what we call a crisis. That's what we call a massive problem, because that means things are not working and things are falling apart. So simple, easy way. You want to manage, you want to learn to be a chief officer, you want to manage life, manage business, manage anything. It's all about having key critical metrics and then tracking those metrics to make sure they're continuing heading in a positive direction. I get blood work done monthly. Why? Because metrics. I step on the scale, not that I care what the weight is, but it's a data point. I do measurements, data points, and I do that in all different areas because that's the only way you can manage and measure a process to make sure it's working. So how the heck can we manage cybersecurity effectively when there's no metric, when there's no way to measure it? One of the reasons why IT and CIOs moved up to the executive ranks so quickly is because very early on, we assigned a metric, 5 nines. If you're not familiar with 5 nines, in IT, it basically says you have to provide uptime and availability 99.9999% of the time. So unscheduled downtime and outages have to be less than the 99.999%, 5 nines. That was understandable, it was clear, it could manage, it worked, and it was effective. Where are our metrics in security? And this is the problem. It's not as easy and simple as it is with IT. 5 nines was brilliant, it worked, it was effective, it met the needs, it met availability, it met uptime, it was brilliant. Security, we've struggled with metrics, and therefore, because we couldn't find a perfect metric, we decided to do no metric. Well, here's the problem. There's no such thing as no metric. There is a metric that is being used. The metric that is being used in every organization today, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, is simply this. If we don't have a breach, security is doing its job. If we have a breach, security's failed. How do I know? Simple. Look at the actions. What happens after almost every breach? Few exceptions, but almost all of the major breaches that have been in the news. What always happens fairly quickly to the breach? The CISO, the CISO gets fired. The person who is responsible for security gets fired. If that is not proof of a metric, I don't know what is. So the problem is our executives are using an awful metric. They're using a terrible metric that does not work, my friends. It doesn't work. So we're sitting here looking for the perfect metric. They're using a terrible metric, and security is in a state of chaos. So what I suggest is start simple. Not saying this is the perfect metric. I'm not saying this is the best metric. I have been obsessed with metrics in cybersecurity for years. This is the best so far. And it's funny, whenever I give talks on it, people always come and go, Eric, I don't agree with it. I say, great, tell me something better. Like, well, I don't have anything better. Then shut up and listen. If you don't have anything better, use this until you find something better. Because guess what? This is better than what your executives are using. It's a heck of a lot better than what your executives are using. And it's attempted attacks. Blocked packets in your firewall. Not perfect, not simple. Sorry, not perfect. It is simple. It's easy. And it gives them perspective. Because here's the reality. Most executives have no clue how aggressive attackers are. They have no clue that you're being attacked or scanned or alerted on thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times a week. When I talk to executives and ask them, how many attempted attacks do you think you have? They say 4 or 5. The reality is it's thousands upon thousands. So all I want you to start doing, super simple, my friends, super simple. Every Friday at noon, I want you to send an email to the executive team that says weekly security stat. The number of attempted attacks that we successfully blocked was 3,521. Don't round up because it doesn't look genuine. Give the real number. 3,521, that's a real, actual number. And just send it to them. And do it consistently every week. You will all of a sudden notice things start to change. You're starting to be invited to meetings. You're included in things. You're like, what's happening? It's because you are providing a clear metric. It's not a perfect metric. And I've done other episodes where I've talked about attempted attacks and metrics for the entire episode. So if you want in-depth analysis of it, go back and look at previous episodes. I've done many 30-minute plus on it. So I'm only going to cover it for a couple minutes here because I got other topics. But just go back and research. But my friend is, you need to start using metrics, and attempted attacks is a great starting point. Now, the other reason why sending that email every week with attempted attacks was so effective is because you're starting to do something that many CISOs don't do. That's one of the biggest trends. Communication. You need to communicate with the executives. We've gotten to this point where, because various reasons and previous CISOs and things maybe outside of your control, you had nothing to do with it, or maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but there's been communication breakdown where CISOs have tried to talk to executives way too technical. Executives have tried to talk to CISOs way too business, and they just pull apart. It's sort of like if you put two people in a room, one person only speaks English, the other person only speaks German. What's going to happen is they're going to try to communicate. They're going to realize they speak different languages. They're still going to try to figure out if the other person can understand their language. And at some point, they're going to get so frustrated, so mad, and so angry that they just stop talking. They both go in their corners and they just say, this is a waste of time. We are no longer going to communicate. That's the problem. In most businesses, the communication bridge between the CISO and the executives have been burnt to the ground and nobody's rebuilt it. It's your job to rebuild it. The problem is the CISOs are sitting there going, well, when the executives are ready, they'll talk to me. And the executives are sitting there, well, when the CISOs are ready, they'll talk to me. Well, guess what? If you care about cybersecurity, you care about the company, and you're a chief officer, put your ego and pride aside and you rebuild the bridge. An easy way to do it, simple, effective communication that you know they want. So that's why sending that email every Friday at noon accomplishes multiple things. Not only does it get metrics, now it's going to start putting some metrics, some clarity, some focus, but you're now rebuilding the communication bridge. You're now communicating with the executives on what they want to hear. And here's the cool part. When you start communicating, and all of a sudden the executive's like, oh, I didn't think they knew how to speak business. I didn't think they knew how to speak English. The reason why I stopped talking to them is because they didn't speak my language. But guess what? This email's in my language. This email I understand. This email's very valuable. So maybe, just maybe, they can communicate. Maybe they can go in and work with us and tell us what we need. And then all of a sudden you start simple. This is why when I tell people to do the metric, the overachievers in the group always blow it. The overachievers in the group always like, Eric, I tried it and it didn't work. I'm like, well, what did you do? Well, I put together a 35 slide deck and sent it to them. I'm like, yeah, you're proving to them you don't speak English. The simplicity is the solution. It's the simplicity of it. Just a simple sentence. Number of attempted attacks we've successfully blocked, 3,132. Boom. Whatever the number is, simple, easy, short, and sweet. but you need to be part of the core team. For security to work, for the security of your company, for the security of the country, for the security of the world, CISOs must be in the inner circle. They must be part of the core five: CEO, COO, CFO, Chief Legal Officer, and CISO. They have to be in that group. It's not an option, it's a must. Which means, what if you're the person who solves that? What if you are known, your superpower is a brilliant CISO that understands cybersecurity, that can communicate like nobody else? What if that is your super? And I'll give you a hint here. Mastering communication and making that your superpower will help you in all areas of your life. If I had to give one piece of advice, and only one piece, and I very often when I give keynotes and speak on stages and part of these big events, they always bring all the speakers back at the end, and they do this final thing with like, okay, you each have 20 seconds to give one piece of advice to the audience. What is the most valuable piece of advice you would give to the audience? And most of the time, it's this: communication is the root of all problems. All problems are caused by either too much or too little communication. So if you have a problem in any area of your life, figure out, is it too much or too little communication, and fix it. I think that might have been 15 seconds. I gave 5 seconds back to the universe, all right? But the point is, learning communication is one of the most valuable skills you can master. And I'll give you a hint. Some superpowers you are born with. You just know. Like some people are just amazing at doing certain things. They just love doing it. And that's the superpower. But let me tell you this. You can still learn and build superpowers. And some superpowers you're born with, and some superpowers you learn out of necessity. Let me give you some of the best advice anyone could ever give you. Making communication one of your superpowers would be one of the best gifts you could give yourself. Couple other trends. Cloud. I bring up cloud because people have forgotten and taken it for granted. If you remember when cloud started coming out, like it was crazy. Like there were people, there were IT people and cybersecurity people, never the cloud. We can't outsource our IT. The IT and cybersecurity is the lifeblood of our organization. How can we outsource it? How can we let somebody else run our data center? How can we let somebody else own our data, have our data? That's crazy. Like people fought it. And talk about the birth of shadow IT. I personally believe cloud was the birth of shadow IT, where people would ask IT for things and they'd say, no, we can't do it. So what do? For $39.99, I'm going to sign up for a subscription of a cloud solution and just send the link to all my customers or all my clients. And all of a sudden, everybody now becomes an IT expert. And because we didn't embrace it, it creeped up on us. And now most companies are in sort of this hodgepodge. Let me ask you a simple question. What is one of the most important jobs as a CISO? Controlling, securing, and managing your data. Great. Can you tell me all locations where your data is at? Do you know every single cloud location, every server, every data center, every system where your data is at? My guess is no. Never met anybody who was actually 100% honest that said yes. Nobody does. So that's a problem. The cloud has become part of an organization structure. It's the norm. It's used. You can't fight it. You can't kill it. You can't stop it. But if you don't embrace it and care for it and understand it, it's going to continue to haunt you. I still see so many breaches that are caused because IT and CISO had no clue where their data was stored, and therefore you can't protect, you can't secure what you don't know about. So revisit the cloud. Are you fully aware and know all the areas where your data is at? All the areas where your information is at. And then the last one, which sort of, you could say, save the best for last, which shouldn't come as a surprise, but companies are still not embracing it the way they should, which is third-party risk management. Look at all the major breaches that have happened because of third-party trust. Yes, third parties, I'm not picking on them. They're a part, they're a necessity, they're required, and most have good security. But some don't, and it might not be at your level. And here's the issue. Often what happens with third parties is they assume that when they drop a server in your environment, that you're properly securing it. But you just pop a hole through the firewall, let anybody access it, and you assume they're securing it. And to go back to one of our trends, because of lack of communication, both sides are like this. And then what happens when a breach occurs? Both sides are like this. So we have to start getting a better handle on who are the third parties we work with, how are they engaged in our business, how are they working, and what level of security is required in order for them to be an effective part of our business. So as we actually succeeded, right? We finished up our series on cyber trends. Notice some of the trends were new, some were things you knew about, and others were just areas where maybe, just maybe, you need to go back and ask yourself just a few more questions.